And hi, everybody. Welcome to Proline, direct from Las Vegas. I'm Dave Koch and joined by Jim Feist. The NFL preseason is actually here. No more Paintgate. That's done. They fixed the fields. Jim Feist and myself, we're going to look at some of the Week 1 games, give you some information on rotations, quarterback rotations in particular, betting angles to keep an eye on, good information. First, Jim, if people subscribe to this channel, well, that's free, and there's a bunch of free stuff that goes with that as well.
Absolutely, Dave. You just go to ProLineTV.com, that is. Click on the subscribe button. You'll get notifications on new videos. Plus, you'll be sent a code for 7 days of my service, absolutely free. ProLineTV.com.
All right. I'll talk about my stuff first, and then we'll talk about yours.
Okay.
I was on a really nice baseball run until last night happened. I only had 2 games, but, you know, you're up by 3 runs late and 4 runs late. We're talking 7th and 8th innings, and lose them both with the bullpens. That's why it can be very frustrating sometimes, but you got to roll with the punches and bounce right back. I'll be doing that. Now, my high roller window plays, they're pretty expensive, but you can get 7 full days of these in baseball and football for $199. We've got some really good plays coming up. Plus, I've already sent out my first college football plays for the season. We're not wasting time on that. 855-472-2577. That's toll free. 855-472-2577. Jim, it's been an extraordinary season of baseball for you. 154 and 101 on 255 baseball plays. 60 and 28 on the high rollers. Baseball games of the month and year combined 26 and 9, including 3-0 this past week. Was the Rockies beat the you-know-what out of the Marlins? I know that was a big play for you.
The Rockies have been playing good.
And until yesterday when they decided to cough up a 4-run lead.
Well, that's another one.
I had the Rockies.
Yeah, of course you did. Baseball has been great. There's no question about it. And it's not all big favorites either, so most of my prices are definitely under 150. I expect football to be just as profitable. Here's my introduction offer right now. 5 days of plays starting tonight for $25. That's football and baseball, including a high roller release going tonight. A $500 value on that high roller release. And that's a bonus to you. I'm 60 and 28 with my baseball high rollers. Just call 866-546-9467.
All right. We got plenty of stuff to talk about, that's
Yes,
for
we
sure.
do.
And we're going to begin with...
Who thought that the football season would start off with a cancellation because of paint?
Well, it was crazy. By the way, you want to hear a quick funny story?
Yes.
David Baker, who's the Hall of Fame president now, I've known him for years.
Oh, you have?
And there wasn't much he could say. But I'm not sure he said it really well. I got into an argument with him on the air years ago. He used to be the commissioner of the Arena Football League. And it was an argument about their playoff format, where I said, this is ridiculous. This was early in the season. I said, your playoff format's a joke. I said, you've got it set up so that a 5-11 team can make the playoffs.
That's right.
And guess what happened? He got very angry about it. And you know what happened? A 5-11 team made the playoffs. So I won that argument. Let's look at some football.
Okay.
We'll start off with the Ravens are playing the...
They're at home to
playing Carolina.
Yeah.
And there's an interesting piece of information that comes down the pipe right away. This isn't inside information by any means.
No.
But what I don't want to stress that this, we got stuff that nobody knows about. It's out there, but you have to go look for it. Now, both teams are going to have a lot of backups in this football game. We know that. But here's the interesting thing. The Ravens rookies reported to camp a full week earlier than the Carolina Panthers rookies. I think in a game this early, where you're going to be seeing a lot of second, third, and even fourth unit guys that aren't going to make the team, I think that makes a difference. And in fact, again, it's not inside information, but we know that Ron Rivera has been very displeased with how slowly his backups are adhering to the system. He basically stopped practice on Monday, I believe it was, and just started screaming at the guys, and that's not Rivera's style, so he was pretty upset.
Well, they're fat and sassy. I mean, they got to the Super Bowl last year, 15-1 regular season. Who could expect to do that again? and you have to think that the superstars on the team, the guys that are the regulars, you have to think that they're not going to be that inspired about playing a preseason game. After all, the last game they played was the Super Bowl. Now they're disappointed about that, and you got to look for them to come back with a vengeance this year, especially in their division, which is very soft. But in a game like this, who do you expect to be more inspired to play it? The Ravens.
I think it's the Ravens, and I'll give you another
Yeah.
reason. This goes back to last preseason and then what followed in the regular season. Now, if you go back and look at John Harbaugh's history in the preseason, he's been really good. I think he's 20-12 lifetime in the preseason, 8 years, 20-12. He was 1-3 last year. They snuck through the first game and then lost the next 3. And I can still remember, I don't remember whether it was week 3. I think it was week 3. Harbaugh, it's a sideline interview at the end of the half. This is the beauty of NFL Network, by the way. They replay all the games, and I do watch all the games because I want to see stuff just like this. So I'm watching this taped replay of a Ravens game, and I'm quite sure it was it might have even been week 2. I'm not remember. It doesn't matter. But they interview him at halftime. You know, the quickie little spot where they do 2 minutes or 30 seconds, whatever it is, before the coach goes. And the Ravens had given up a score in the last 2 minutes of the half, and Harbaugh was steaming. He goes, I don't know what we're going to. He says, what I'd like is if we could figure out a way to stop the damn team from scoring in the last 2 minutes. Now, all this might seem insignificant, but the fact is the Ravens followed up their by far worst preseason under Harbaugh with their worst regular season under Harbaugh. A lot of injury problems, but let's face it, even before the injuries came into play, this team was struggling. They started off with 1 win and 1-5, I think they were. Then they barely won. They beat Pittsburgh, and that was it. They lost everything else. Their season was over in a hurry. I think there's going to be more of a sense of urgency on Harbaugh's part to deliver some positive momentum right out of the gate. And who better to do it against than the defending NFC champion and Super Bowl representative Carolina Panthers? I think that's the edge I like to look for in the preseason, and I think I've got it here with Baltimore.
I can't disagree, Dave. I mean, bringing in the rookies a week early helps. Harbaugh being pissed off after what happened, not only in the first game last year in the preseason, but in the regular season. All the injuries they had. Their offensive line was terrible. Everything about the team was just down, and they just couldn't put it together. Terrible team. But in this game, even though they're playing a team that was 15-1 in the regular season last year and got to the Super Bowl, the game opened to pick, and it's now 1.5 just about everywhere. Baltimore the favorite. They are playing at home. It's a big momentum builder for a team like this. Now, granted, these games don't matter, but they do matter. Preseason is different than it was years ago, but we'll talk about that later, about the hitting and the limited practices and all that stuff. But this is a game where the motivation is definitely going to be more with Baltimore.
Now, speaking of motivation, let's look at another game. Is there the current Super Bowl champions, the Broncos, are playing the Bears? You wonder if John Fox is sitting in his office right now going, yeah, defending Super Bowl champions, and I was their coach, and they got me out of there, and now I'm with the Bears. I'd like to beat this team. You wonder. Also, we've got quarterback rotations to talk about in this game. We know what the Broncos are going to do. They've announced that they're going to play butt fumble. Mark Sanchez will be the starting quarterback. He'll play a quarter. Simeon's going to play a quarter, and they're going to get Paxton Lynch out there for apparently most of the second half.
That's right.
If you saw him play at Memphis, this kid's got talent. He's got a chance to be a good NFL quarterback. But right now, this is all brand new to him. He hasn't played in an offense, an NFL offense. So the learning curve could be kind of steep there.
Don't forget one other thing. Cutler.
Yeah,
was also
a Bronco.
So you have both Fox and you have Cutler. Now, that doesn't mean anything. Again, the preseason games don't matter, but they do matter because there's guys out there trying to win positions and keep a job. What's there, over 100 players on a team right now, and then they're going to cut half of them? Something like that?
It's close to that,
yeah.
90-something.
So, these guys are either going to be bagging groceries at the end of this month or they're going to be playing football. What would you rather be doing? So they're out there trying. Fox obviously was pissed by getting fired by Elway and company, and then them going off and winning the Super Bowl. By the way, that was probably the weakest Super Bowl winner I've ever seen.
Yeah, at least we had the winner.
When you look at the way Manning was and everything, it was the defense that did it. And, of course, Carolina was a little bit too inexperienced to play as well as they could have. But this is not that great a team to begin with. When you look at the offensive side of the ball, this is a team that lost their first 2 quarterbacks in the offseason, and they end up with Mark butt fumble Sanchez, which I do expect him to be better than he was in New York. Why? Because
it can't be any worse.
Well, the party life, et cetera, in New York was, pretty darn good. I lived there. I know what that's like. But in Denver, it's a little bit different. I think he's more mature. He's probably working harder. I don't know much about Trevor Siemian except they say he's doing very well, and they gave co-starters.
I think he's got a chance. I think he's just my gut feeling. He ends up the starting quarterback to start the season.
Wow.
I think he's going to beat Sanchez out.
That would be
Sanchez's
amazing.
game to me has declined to the point where he can't be a starting quarterback at this point. All right, if you want to ask us anything pertaining to sports wagering here in Las Vegas, or we know a little bit about what's going on offshore as well, just go to ProlineTV.com. Drop us a question. It doesn't cost anything. And speaking of not costing anything, be sure to hit the subscribe button, and you'll get 7 days of action free.
That's right. Plus, go to JimFeist.com for free stats, articles, videos, podcasts, my free fast facts, and plays from the nation's leading handicappers.
All right, that sounds good. Stay tuned because we're going to come back. We're going to take a look at more weekend games. The Las Vegas, well, wait a minute, not yet. The Oakland Raiders and the Cardinals and the Seahawks will be taking on the Chiefs. We'll look at those games when we come back. All right, so let's look at some football.
Okay, let's do it.
We were joking around about the Las Vegas Raiders. I think it's better than 50% now that that's going to happen.
Wow, really?
Yeah, I think the stadium's going to get done. Sorry, tourists, you're the ones that are going to pay for it. It won't cost a look. It will be a hotel tax, a tourist tax, if you will. But
how much is the stadium going to cost? Do you think?
A blank load of money.
Billion?
Oh, hell yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, got well over that. Well over. I think could be 2, maybe more than that. But not to get into the hotel stuff, but I think our tax now is like 10%, which is way lower than the national average. So they might bump it up to 11.5, something like that. So
nobody will notice.
No, nobody will notice. And we'll have a brand new stadium, and we'll have the Raiders. And I think it's going to happen.
That'll be exciting for the city, for sure.
It'll be phenomenal.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, they're the Oakland Raiders for another year.
Yep.
And they might be pretty good this year. I mean, let's just say that the prospects of the Raiders being a playoff contender this year are legitimate for the first time in, you got to go back over a decade. I mean, it's been a long time. I think the last time they were relevant was Callahan was still the coach. This is a pretty good football team.
It's a good football team, but let's throw a little mud on this.
All right.
Okay. Last year they played a pretty easy schedule.
Yes, they did. Oh, I know where you're going with this.
And the schedule stepped up this year, which is unfortunate for people that like Oakland. And the other thing is they have 5 trips to the East Coast, and that's murder. When you're traveling from the west to the east to play a 10 o'clock our time game, which is 1 o'clock Eastern time game, that's really hard on players. The body clock, they're not quite awake. It just works that way, and there's very few teams that have ever been able to consistently overcome that. I don't know what the answer is, but that is in the schedule, and I don't know why the league, unless they're still punishing them from the Al Davis days, but why would you schedule a team from the West Coast to have 5 early morning East Coast?
That's brutal.
Yeah, it's very unfair, and there's a lot of unfairness in the NFL scheduling.
Yeah, but unfortunately, that's for them. That's the way it is, and that's what they're going to have to go through. As far as this game is concerned, we know pretty much the rotations. It's going to be Carr McGloin, Connor Cook will be in there at some point for the Raiders. At quarterback, Arizona. Obviously, Carson Palmer is going to play very little in this football game. Drew Stanton.
They got a good backup.
Drew Stanton can play backup. Yes, he can. And Matt Barkley and Jake Coker will be vying for the other spot on the roster if they decide to carry 3 quarterbacks.
They're a better football team. The question is, does Bruce Arians really care? Does he really want to put it out there?
I wouldn't.
No, I wouldn't either, especially, well, first of all, you're talking about the offense. During the regular season, you're dealing with an old quarterback. Palmer is an old quarterback, and he's vulnerable. And he didn't end last season very well in the playoff game and the thrashing by Carolina. That was a pretty bad effort by him. So there's a lot to overcome there, and it's mostly mental. He's got to get over the mental fact that he couldn't perform under the lights, the big lights. So this is a critical game for setting a standard. My gut feeling is you don't want to lay over 3 points with any team in the preseason.
I agree with that for the most part.
And that's what we're looking at here. We're looking at a 3, and I do see some 2.5s. I don't really have an opinion in the game.
No,
but
I'm
I will
staying
say
out of
this
this
in general. In general, for the preseason, and this is a shot at the collective bargaining agreement, the NFL. The fact that they don't allow these guys to play in pads, to get hit, and to get consistently into practice and work it out during the preseason, you're going to see a lot of coaches backing off, which means they're going to try to save the players and not get injured. We're already seeing injuries in the camps now. Victor Cruz just got a groin injury this morning. So this is happening each and every day. Dallas is decimated already with suspensions and injuries. Yep. So they have to back off or they're going to have no first-line players to play. I don't see a lot of scoring in any of these games. General statement here, I expect most of them to stay under the total.
All right, another game we can look at is the Seattle Seahawks and the Chiefs. And a little interesting note here, we all know, if you follow this stuff even just a little bit, just casually, Pete Carroll likes to win all the games. He's been a great preseason coach. He's 27-12 against the number as a preseason coach. Andy Reid had always been one who was like, what? We got to play football and games don't count? Until last year. They went 4-0 and then had a really good regular season. And you wonder, and I'm just speculating here. It's not any particular information. But you wonder if Reid's looking at that going, built up some nice momentum going into the regular season and it kind of carried through. Chiefs had a decent year. So you wonder if maybe that's a little bit of a change in Reid's philosophy. I don't know. It's going to keep me out of this game. I'm not playing against Carroll in a preseason game because I know, 27-12 is pretty, and that's a pretty amazing preseason record. That means, and the game, you can tell if you watch the Seattle game, you know he wants to win everything. Okay, guy doesn't like to lose. He's very competitive. But you wonder if Reid may have changed his philosophy a bit.
Let's look at this a little bit deeper. Then I appreciate those comments, and I agree with you in general. However, I'm going to back off Carroll a little bit. Last year, they came out and did not play well early in the year. And they made it up, and they got far, and they got fortunate in some games. They weren't the Seattle Seahawks that they were the previous years. Wilson's got a big contract now. He was 34 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. He's a remarkable quarterback. Their offensive line needs to be rebuilt. They're working on that. But look at the backups we have here. Trevor Boykin. I don't know much about him.
Kid out of TCU.
Okay. They still
missed the bowl game when he got arrested.
It's not an NFL team. That's a college
I don't think
team.
Boykin's an NFL quarterback.
Jake Heaps.
Wow. Jake Heaps was once the most prized high school recruit in the country. Hasn't exactly worked out.
Okay. Running backs banged up. Marshawn Lynch is gone.
Yep.
And his
Rawls
is now hurt. Okay.
Tell you what though, they apparently had a very intense practice a few days ago.
That's great, but does that take away from this? See, now let's look at the backup situations with Kansas City.
See, I don't like that.
Alex Smith.
But you got Foles, who they just signed, and he just signed, so he can't know the system.
Hold on a second. Who's his coach? Who was the coach when he was 27 touchdowns and 2 interceptions?
Okay, yeah, I forgot about that.
He asked out of San Francisco to be cut so he could go there.
Yes.
He's back with the coach that helped him be 27-2 touchdowns to interceptions. This is where he wants to be. Makes a difference. Now you got Smith, Foles. I don't know much about Bray. You got Kevin Hogan, Aaron Murray. You don't know 5 quarterbacks.
They have 5 quarterbacks. They got to divide up the playing time.
May not all play in one game.
No, I don't think Tyler. I don't think Tyler Bray is going to be there long, the Tennessee kid.
This
Aaron Murray, some people think could be a backup in the league.
I respect line moves.
Hogan's interesting. Hogan doesn't have the tools. You know, you look at quarterbacks and you try and judge the tools, and you look at Hogan and say, that kid's got it up here, Stanford kid.
Yeah.
I think Hogan can find a place in an NFL roster. I don't know if it'll be this one or not. And I'm not saying he's going to ever be a starting quarterback, but I think he can make a team.
One last point. Look at the line move. Kansas City opened 1.5, 35.5. Total still the same. It's up to 3. Now,
That could be significant.
and this is early, so the donkeys aren't betting preseason at this point. If there's some sharp guys that see this, I'm not saying you follow all line moves, but you have to read the lines. You have to read between the lines. I'm thinking Kansas City's the right side. They certainly have the better backup situation.
I would agree with that. All right. Viewers can get free plays every day from us. And you get it right on your cell phone. Jim, you can tell them the information. It's a snap.
Just text GAME to 25827. You'll get free plays each and every day right to your cell phone. GAME, G-A-M-E, to 25827. There's no reason not to do it. We're going to send you the games for free. GAME, 25827.
All right, stay tuned. We're going to give you some other preseason wagering information, some more info on preseason quarterback rotations, the good, the bad, and the ugly, right here on ProLineTV.com. Almost forgot what we were doing.
That was a movie.
Yes, it was. Clint Eastwood.
Yeah, good movie.
So let's look at a few NFL trends. And the reason I want to mention these is because in each case, we could be looking at a situation where things are about to change. I'm not saying to just bet against these trends, but when you see trends, you have to ask yourself why it's happened and is it going to continue to happen. That's
Correct.
true, and I don't care what sport you're looking at, or
Correct.
even if it's the stock market. If you're looking at trends in the stock market, you got to isolate reasons that they're going a certain way. If you don't have a reason, then it's probably not going to keep going that way. Rex Ryan, 20-8 to the over in preseason, but does that continue with Rob Ryan now coming in and installing some changes on defense, let's put it that way. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen with the Bills in the regular season, but I have a feeling they're going to pay a little more attention to detail on defense in the preseason, don't you?
Well, they have to do something because they fell from 4th in the league in defense to 28th in the league last year under Rex Ryan. Rex, when he was with the Jets, he came out and they got into the playoffs that first couple of years. I think a lot of that was maybe the way defense was played at that time, and it has changed. But he is not a coach that's really down to detail. And his brother, now that's defensive coordinator, has had a terrible record at Dallas and then New Orleans, and now he's going to come in here. I personally think the Ryan boys, twins, are going to have a disastrous
I think they're going
team
to.
here.
My prediction: they're both going after the season.
I totally agree with you. I don't see anything from either one of these guys that brings consistency. Yeah, the players like them. They get along with them.
The players. Who cares if the players like that? I don't think the players really particularly like Bill Belichick.
Probably.
They like winning, and they're going to do things his way.
They
and
definitely
that's
are.
the
Or
way
they won't
it is.
be there.
Right.
Exactly.
Speaking of Belichick, big numbers to the over in the preseason, 51 and 34. And here's one that it could continue because they're going to get Jimmy G a lot of reps at quarterback because he's got to play the first 4 games. And I would think that Belichick probably wants to make sure he's got a confident quarterback for those first 4 games. So maybe getting some points might be a good thing. Getting some productive drives and getting something on the scoreboard. Again, speculating here. Don't chisel this in stone. It's just a thought process. And he's been a coach that has had a tendency to let the offense go out there and do some stuff early on. Doesn't show much on defense in terms of schemes early in preseason. He just doesn't care about it.
Which increases the total on
Right.
both sides. When you have Brady and Garoppolo and whoever else they use after that, going against second and third string defenses, I mean, against first string defenses, they're murder. But against second and third string defenses, yeah, you can expect points. I would expect that to continue. Brady's going to have to get some reps along the way, too, even though he's going to sit out 4 weeks. At some point in time, he's got to get.
From what I gather, they're going to treat his preseason like a typical preseason where he plays none, basically.
The one thing about Belichick, he will do everything. He'll do everything differently than everybody else.
Yep.
He's hard to
And
predict.
by the way,
but
Brady,
this is consistent.
Brady doesn't need any preseason games, and he won't be rusty at all.
Well, he practiced the other day, 24 out of 24.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like ridiculous.
He's
this guy.
the best. I think he's the best quarterback of all time. That's my opinion. Okay, McCarthy at Green Bay, 27-13 over the total. Now here's an interesting situation because they're not going to play Rodgers much. Brett Hundley's going to play plenty, and he was spectacular last August. And the reports on him are that he's had a phenomenal offseason. He's got a much better understanding of the offense now than he did last year when he was pretty much doing it on field. They're very impressed with Hundley. But how much will he play in the second half of these games early on? And that's where you get Joe Callahan and Marquise Williams, two raw rookies, undrafted. I think if you're looking at overs on Green Bay, if you expect that trend to continue, over in the first half. I'm not sure I want to keep throwing money. I don't know if I want to trust the raw rookies in the second half. So you could be looking at more points being scored in the first half. And if you can get value there, if the first half number is basically half of the overall total, I think that's where the value would be for a coach who's had an over tendency.
In the last segment, I did say that I look for a lot of unders because the coaches are very afraid. They're petrified of the injuries. They've seen what happened last year to Dallas and Baltimore, and the whole league is now very concerned about injuries. So I don't see you're going to see a lot of output, but you should see that in the line. So there may be some spots when you have the real over tendency coaches with a lower line because the trend will be under, you might get some value. Personally, it's going to be difficult for me to bet a lot of overs because of that.
All right, number 32 out of 32 in terms of his preseason record is Jason Garrett of the Dallas Cowboys.
That's not going to stop.
I don't think it is going to stop. At least, look, they've got a bunch of injury problems already, which is a rerun of last year. Normally, I mean, the way it usually works is a team that's really healthy one year isn't as lucky the next time around, and a team that's unlucky with injuries usually has a little better grasp on the good fortune the next season. Not starting off that way for the Cowboys, who have a lot of injuries already, and he's 6-14 against the number since taking over as the head coach.
You got Garrett against Fisher, L.A. Rams. Fisher used to be the guy that was 8-8 every year. Now he's 7-9 every year. I mean, this guy hasn't had a winning record in 13 years, 12 or 13 years. They're really not solid at quarterback. I don't see a lot of points in this game. It's going to be difficult for me to imagine that Dallas is going to put out much of an effort with the injuries that they have. The game is meaningless. The Rams are not an offensive juggernaut anyway. So I don't look for a lot of points. This is one of those games where I think it's probably going to tend under.
And the Cowboys would fall into that category of least experienced preseason quarterback rotations. Romo obviously is not going to play very much for clear reasons. They can't afford to have him out there.
Correct.
He's gotten a little brittle, and they just can't take a chance with him. So you're looking at Dak Prescott, who's a rookie out of Mississippi State. I don't think he's an NFL quarterback. We'll have to wait and see. Jamel Showers out of UTEP. He's a second-year guy. That's a weak rotation.
Well, this goes back to the injury issues that we talked about. Kellen Moore, who actually is a pretty smart guy and knows how to manipulate around, especially against preseason defenses.
Huge.
He broke his leg. He's gone. And now you're stuck with what Dave just said. So they are really hurting, and they're hurting from suspensions and injuries on the defensive side as well. This is a team that's might have a second bad year because of that.
I wouldn't doubt it. Seattle, we talked about them, and it's a different setup out there this year. You've still got Russell Wilson, but again, he doesn't need to be out there a whole bunch of the time. And back in, Trayvon Boykin out of TCU. A lot of talent, but I think more of a college guy. And by the way, he's got to impress some people after his end to last season, where he got suspended because he got arrested and didn't play in the bowl game. And Jay Keeps, who just never materialized. That's not a very good quarterback rotation. And so we've talked about this in relation to Carroll's great preseason tendencies. Don't know if that continues this year with that quarterback rotation.
I don't think it does. I think, and we talked about it a little bit earlier, looked at, they're playing Kansas City this week. Kansas City has a much better quarterback rotation going for them with Alex Smith, and now they picked up Foles. And if you didn't hear it before, Foles was 27 touchdowns and 2 interceptions a few years ago, and his head coach was Andy Reid. He's back with his head coach that he happened to like. Andy's always done well with quarterbacks, and maybe that's the chemistry that he needs.
We have free plays every day on a recorded message from one of our Vegas experts. All you need to do is call the toll-free number, 888-478-9222.
Also, at ProlineTV.com, click on the subscribe button. You're going to get notifications on new videos. Plus, you'll be sent a code to get 7 days of my service absolutely free. That's ProlineTV.com.
All right, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week with another edition of Proline. And by the way, this is a little bit of a relic right here. Remember back on the TV news, this is the way they always close the show. They do this with the papers.
Was
They
that
don't do that
Walter
anymore.
Cronkite?
That was every local news guy on the planet.
Okay.
Yeah, one did it, so they all
We're
did
throwbacks.
it. They don't do that anymore, so there's something out of the past. And we'll show you something else that makes no sense next week on Proline.